I always believed the hardest part of losing my grandmother was the silence she left behind. That changed the afternoon I opened a plain envelope from the credit union and saw the balance. 0. The $9,800 she saved for me wasn't just missing, it was stolen. My brother, Derek, thought our family's code of silence would protect him like it always did. He didn't realize I was finally done paying for his mistakes. The envelope was waiting for me when I got home from work, sitting innocently on the small console table in my entryway where I tossed my keys. It was a standard business envelope, white with a blue security tint pattern on the inside, bearing the logo of Pine and River Credit Union. I almost didn't open it. In the digital age, physical mail usually meant junk offers for credit cards I did not need, or coupons for window replacements I could not afford. But this one was addressed to me specifically as the custodian for the estate of Eleanor Vance. My grandmother. It had been 4 years since Gran passed, and seeing her name typed out in that stark, impersonal font still caused a small, sharp catch in my throat. I carried the mail into the kitchen, kicked off my heels, and poured a glass of tap water. The apartment was quiet, the kind of stillness that usually comforted me after a day of managing tenant disputes and maintenance logs at Lakebridge property, but today the silence felt heavy. I slit the envelope open with my thumbnail, expecting a privacy notice or a policy update. The credit union sent them annually. I unfolded the single sheet of paper, my eyes scanning the header, then the account number, and finally dropping to the summary box at the bottom. My hand froze. The glass of water sat forgotten on the counter. Balance. $0.00. I blinked, assuming I had misread the line. I brought the paper closer, tilting it under the under-cabinet lighting. There it was, bold and undeniable. 0. The account should have held exactly $9,800, give or take a few dollars in accrued interest. It was the college fund Gran had started for me when I was born. I had never touched it. When I went to State University, I worked 3 jobs and took out loans because I could not bear to drain the account. It was not just money to me, it was the only thing in my life that represented pure, unasked-for safety. It was the only thing Gran had been able to keep away from the chaotic financial gravity of my parents. She had told me, holding my hand in her hospital room a week before she died, that it was my freedom money. She said to keep it until I needed to leave something behind. I had kept it. I checked the balance online maybe once a year, just to see the numbers, to feel that safety net beneath me. I looked at the transaction history printed below the summary. Withdrawal. $3,000. 6 weeks ago. Withdrawal. $3,000. 4 weeks ago. Withdrawal. $3,800 and change. 5 days ago. The air in my kitchen seemed to thin out, making it hard to breathe. This was not a bank error. Bank errors did not happen in round numbers spaced out over a month and a half. This was deliberate. This was a siphoning. I sat down on one of the bar stools because my legs suddenly felt untrustworthy. I stared at the dates. 5 days ago, while I was at work, reviewing lease agreements, someone had walked into a branch or logged onto a computer and taken the last of what Gran had left me. My first thought was identity theft. Someone had hacked the credentials. I needed to call the fraud department immediately. I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling slightly, but stopped. Pine and River Credit Union was a small, local institution in Briar Glen. They did not have robust online transfers for accounts as old as this one. To move that kind of money, you usually had to be there, or you had to have very specific authorization. I looked at the statement again. The withdrawals were listed as counter transactions, in person. A cold, sick feeling began to uncoil in my stomach. It was the same feeling I used to get when I was 10 years old and would come home to find the television missing, or when my father would promise to pick me up from practice and simply never show. It was the sensation of the floor dropping out. I did not call the number on the paper. I grabbed my purse, shoved the letter inside, and walked back out the door. It was 4 in the afternoon. If I drove fast, I could make it to the branch on 4th Street before they locked the doors. The drive was a blur of gray Ohio streets and red taillights. Briar Glen was the kind of town that felt perpetually overcast, a place where industry had died 20 years ago and left behind a residue of resignation. I gripped the steering wheel tight enough to turn my knuckles white. I was 33 years old. I was a professional woman with a 401k and a pristine credit score. I was not the scared little girl hiding in her room while collectors banged on the front door anymore, but as I drove, I felt that old helplessness trying to claw its way back in. I parked the car at a crooked angle and hurried into the credit union. The air inside smelled of stale coffee and carpet cleaner, a scent that reminded me of funeral parlors. There was only one customer ahead of me, an elderly man depositing a stack of checks. I waited, tapping my foot, my arms crossed tight over my chest to hold myself together. When the teller called me forward, I recognized her, Mrs. Gable. She had been working there since I was in high school. She had a kind, tired face and wore a cardigan that looked like it had been knitted a decade ago. "Hello, Lillian," she said, offering a polite smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "It is good to see you. How is your mother?" "Fine," I said, the word coming out sharper than I intended. I cleared my throat and tried to soften my tone. "She is fine, thank you. I need to ask about this statement. I just received it." I slid the paper across the marble counter. Mrs. Gable looked at it, and I saw a flicker of recognition in her expression. It was fleeting, a tiny tightening of the lips, but I caught it. She did not need to look up the account. She knew. "Oh," she said softly. "Yes, the account closure. I did not close this account. Mrs. Gable," she paused, her fingers hovering over her keyboard. She looked at me, then past me, as if checking to see if anyone was listening. "The withdrawals were authorized. Lillian, we checked the identification carefully. You know how strict Mr. Henderson is about the older custodial accounts. Authorized by whom?" I asked. My voice was steady, but it sounded foreign to my own ears. "I am the only name on that account since Gran died." Mrs. Gable sighed, a sound of genuine discomfort. She typed something rapidly and then turned her screen slightly, though not enough for me to see. "There is a joint access addendum," she said. "It was filed roughly 4 years ago, right around the time the estate was settled. It lists a secondary authorized user with full withdrawal privileges." "Who?" I demanded. Mrs. Gable looked at me with pity. That was the worst part. It was not confusion or suspicion. It was pity. She knew my family. Everyone in Briar Glen knew everyone else's business if you dug deep enough. It was Derek. "Lillian, your brother." The name hung in the air between us, heavy and toxic. "Derek." I felt the blood drain from my face. I gripped the edge of the counter. "Show me," I whispered. "I cannot show you the screen, but I can print the document for you," she said. "Please." She walked to the large printer behind the line. The seconds ticked by, agonizingly slow. I stared at the pen chained to the counter. Derek. Of course it was Derek. He was 5 years older than me. The golden boy who could do no wrong. The one who always had a big idea that just needed a little capital. The one who charmed his way out of every disaster he created. Mrs. Gable returned with 3 stapled pages. She slid them across the counter face down. I flipped them over. It was a standard Family Access and Survivor Designation form. I saw my grandmother's signature at the top, shaky and weak, dated years before she died, and there, at the bottom, dated 4 days after her funeral, was Derek's signature. It was a bold, looping scrawl. I knew it as well as I knew my own. He had added himself to the account during the paperwork chaos. I remembered that week. I had been grieving, unable to eat, barely sleeping, trying to handle the funeral home and the obituary. Derek had offered to run errands. He had offered to drop off the death certificates at the bank and the credit union to freeze the assets. He had not just frozen them, he had opened a back door. He had sat on this for 4 years. He had waited. He had let the money sit there, knowing I treated it like a sacred relic, knowing I wouldn't touch it. And then, when he needed it, He had walked in and taken it. Does he know I was notified? I asked, not looking up from the paper. The system sends an automatic statement when an account hits a zero balance. Mrs. Gable said gently. He might not have realized that would happen so quickly. Thank you, I said. I took the papers and walked out. I did not say goodbye. I sat in my car in the parking lot, the engine cold, and stared at the dashboard. The rage came slowly, not like a fire, but like a rising tide of ice water. $9,800. I pulled out my phone. I dialed Derek's number. He answered on the second ring, his voice booming and bright, the way he always sounded when he was trying to sell something. Lily pad. To what do I owe the pleasure? Long time no talk. Sis? The nickname made my stomach turn. He sounded so normal. He had stolen my inheritance 5 days ago, and he was acting like we were just two siblings catching up. I am at the credit union. Derek, I said. There was a pause, a silence that lasted exactly 2 seconds too long. Then, a shift in his tone. The brightness remained, but the edges of it became brittle. Oh? What are you doing there? I thought you did all your banking with that big national chain now. I received a statement today. I said, the account is empty. Another pause. This one was shorter. He was calculating. I could practically hear the gears grinding in his head, spinning through potential lies before landing on a strategy. Listen, Lil, he said, letting out a laugh that sounded forced. I was going to call you about that. I really was. I just wanted to get everything sorted out first so you would not worry. Sorted out? I asked. You took the money. You took all of it. It is not taken. Lillian, God, you make it sound like a robbery. It is a loan, a temporary loan. A loan implies you asked, I said. A loan implies I agreed. I was in a jam, okay? A serious jam. It happened so fast, and I knew you were sitting on that cash just letting it gather dust. You have not touched a cent of it in 4 years. I figured, why go to a predatory lender when the family has resources? I fully meant to replace it before the statement cycle hit. I just missed the window. Resources? I repeated. That was Gran's money. Derek, that was for me. It was for the family, he corrected, his voice hardening slightly. Gran wanted us to be okay, and right now, I am the one who is not okay. What happened? I asked. I needed to know. I needed to hear the lie. Car trouble, he said quickly. The transmission on the truck blew out. You know I cannot work without the truck. It was $5,000 just for the parts. Lil, the statement shows 3 separate withdrawals. Derek, 6 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, and last week. Did your transmission blow out 3 times? He stumbled. I could feel him losing his footing. Well, it was a cascade thing, the truck, and then, look, I had a late fee on the mortgage that was going to trigger a foreclosure warning. I had to squash it, and then I had some dental work. I needed a crown. It adds up. You know how expensive things are right now. 3 different excuses in under 60 seconds. The car, the house, the tooth. You are lying. I said, I am not lying, he snapped, the charm evaporating completely now. Why do you always assume the worst of me? I am your brother. I am telling you. I am good for it. I will put it back. When? I asked. Soon. When things settle down. I am not accepting soon. Derek, I want a date. He sighed, a loud, dramatic exhalation of breath that distorted the audio on the phone. You are being incredibly uptight about this. You are not even using the money. Lillian, it is just a number on a screen to you. To me, it was survival. Do you want me to lose my house? Is that what you want? I want my money back. I said, fine, God, I will get it back to you. Just give me some time. Let's not make this a thing, okay? Don't go crying to Mom about it. She does not need the stress. The line went dead. He had hung up on me. I sat there for a long time, listening to the silence of the car. Let's not make this a thing. As if theft was a minor social faux pas, like forgetting a birthday or chewing with your mouth open. I drove home on autopilot. When I walked into my apartment, the envelope was still on the counter where I had left it. I picked it up and placed it next to the printout from the credit union. I made myself a simple dinner, scrambled eggs and toast, but I could only manage 2 bites. I kept hearing Derek's voice, "You are not even using the money," as if my lack of immediate need constituted his permission to take. It was the logic of a parasite. My phone buzzed on the table at 8 o'clock. It was my mother. I stared at the screen. Derek had called her. Of course he had. He had gotten ahead of the narrative. He knew I would call her eventually, so he had to poison the well first. I swiped to answer. "Hello? Mom? Lillian? Honey?" Her voice was soft, laced with that perpetual anxiety she wore like a perfume. "How are you?" "I am tired. Mom, I know. You work so hard. Listen, I just got off the phone with Derek. I waited. I wanted to see how she would frame it. He sounds terrible. Lillian, he is really under a lot of pressure right now. He told me about the mix-up with the account." "The mix-up?" I asked. "Is that what he called it?" "Well, you know how he gets when he is stressed. He makes bad decisions, but his heart is in the right place. He was crying. Lillian, he feels awful about borrowing that money without asking. He did not borrow it. Mom, he stole it. He forged a path to access it 4 years ago and drained it dry. Lillian, please, don't use words like that. Stole is for criminals. Derek is your brother. He took almost $10,000. I know it is a lot of money," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "but he is going to pay it back. He promised me. You just need to give him some breathing room. If you go after him about this, if you make a scene, he is fragile right now. You know he is. We have to support him. Family loyalty has to come first." I closed my eyes. There it was, the prepared speech, the script she had been reading for my entire life. Derek makes a mess. We hand him a broom. Derek sets a fire. We apologize for the smoke. "Did you know?" I asked. The question hung there. What? Did you know he had access to the account? Did you know he was taking the money? There was a silence on the other end of the line. It was a thick, guilty silence. I knew he was struggling," she said, her voice trembling. "He asked me for help a few weeks ago, but I didn't have anything to give him. He mentioned he might have to dip into the reserves. I didn't realize he meant Gran's account. I don't know what I thought. She was lying, or at least, she was lying to herself, which was the same thing in our family. She knew. She had stood by and watched him loot the one thing Gran had left for me because it was easier than telling him no. The betrayal hit me then. Harder than the empty bank account. It was a physical blow to the chest. It wasn't just Derek. It was the whole system. My mother, the peacekeeper, the martyr, had decided a long time ago that Derek's comfort was worth more than my security. She expected me to absorb the loss. She expected me to stay quiet because I was the strong one. I was the one who could handle it. I am not giving him breathing room. "Mom," I said, "Lillian, don't be like this. I am not being like anything. I am being the person who got robbed. I am going to hang up now." I said, "Lillian." I ended the call. I put the phone face down on the table. The apartment felt different now. The walls felt sharper. The light colder. I looked around at the life I had built. The secondhand furniture I had restored myself. The books I had collected. The quiet, orderly existence I had fought for. They thought I would roll over. They thought I would cry for a few days, complain to a friend, and then let it go because that is what women in our family did. We forgave. We endured. But Gran hadn't left me that money to help me endure. She had left it to me so I wouldn't have to. I stood up and walked to my desk. I opened my laptop and logged in. The screen glowed blue in the dim room. I created a new folder on the desktop. I didn't name it Family or Derek. I typed $9,800. I logged into the credit union portal. I still had my viewing access. Even if the money was gone, I took screenshots of the zero balance. I downloaded the transaction history as a PDF. I scanned the physical letter I had received in the mail. I typed up a summary of the conversation with the teller, including the time and her name. I typed up a summary of the call with Derek, noting his 3 conflicting excuses. I was not going to scream. I was not going to fight with my mother on the phone. I was going to treat this like a property claim. I was going to treat my brother like a tenant who had violated his lease and destroyed the unit. I looked at the folder on my screen. It was small, just a little icon, but it felt heavy. Derek wanted to play games with secrets. He wanted to hide behind the veil of family privacy. But he had forgotten who he was dealing with. He thought I was still his little sister who looked up to him. He didn't realize that for the last 10 years. I had been cleaning up other people's messes for a living. I knew how to document a disaster, and I knew exactly how to collect a debt. I closed the laptop, turned off the lights, and sat in the dark. I didn't cry. The time for crying was over. Now was the time for accounting. The fluorescent lights of the break room at Lakebridge Property Group usually gave me a headache, but that morning they felt like the only thing keeping me awake. I had slept for maybe 2 hours, my mind looping through the image of that bank statement like a corrupted video file. $9,800. Zero balance. Tessa Lorne found me staring at the steam rising from a paper cup of black coffee. Tessa had been my friend since my first week as a leasing agent, 7 years ago. She was the kind of person who could spot a leak in a ceiling or a lie in a tenant application from 50 feet away. She sat down opposite me, unwrapping a granola bar with precise, sharp movements. "You look like you are haunting this room." "Lillian," she said. I did not have the energy to deflect. I looked at her, really looked at her, and decided that if I kept this inside for 1 more hour, I was going to shatter. My brother stole my inheritance. I said. The wrapper crinkled loudly as Tessa stopped moving. She stared at me, her dark eyes narrowing. "Excuse me?" I told her everything. I told her about the envelope, the trip to the credit union, the 3 withdrawals, and Derek's voice on the phone telling me not to make it a thing. As I spoke, I felt a strange sense of detachment, as if I were reading a police report about someone else's life. But when I got to the part about my mother, about her speech regarding family loyalty, my voice cracked. I stopped talking. The break room refrigerator hummed in the corner. Tessa placed her granola bar on the table. She did not offer me a hug. She did not tell me it would be okay. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the laminate table, and looked at me with the intensity of a prosecutor. "How much?" she asked. $9,800. I said. "And he spent it on what?" "He claims it was a car repair, then a mortgage fee, then dental work." He could not keep the story straight. Tessa nodded slowly. She tapped a fingernail against the table. "He is not going to pay you back. Lillian, he said he would." I protested, though the words tasted like ash. "He said he just needed time." Tessa shook her head. "Think about it. He stole it because he thought you would not notice. Now that you have noticed, he is banking on the fact that you are too polite to do anything about it. He knows you, Lillian. You follow the rules. You keep the peace. He is counting on that." I looked down at my coffee. She was right. Derek's entire life had been a series of gambles based on the calculation that everyone else would fold before he did. "So what do I do?" I asked. "Sue him?" "Maybe," she said. "But lawsuits are public. They are messy." "He knows you hate mess. I do hate mess." "Then you have a problem," Tessa said. "Because right now, this is a private secret. It is just between you, him, and your mother, as long as it stays in that little triangle. He holds all the power. He can gaslight you. He can delay. He can make you feel guilty for asking for your own money." She took a sip of her water and delivered the question that would change the trajectory of my entire life. "Do you think he will ever pay you back if no one else knows?" The question hung in the air. I thought about Derek's charm. I thought about how he positioned himself in Briar Glen as the helpful neighbor, the dedicated volunteer, the good guy. He thrived on the approval of strangers. "No," I whispered, "he won't." "Then you need to change the terms," Tessa said. "You do not need to scream it from the rooftops, but you need to make sure he knows that the silence is conditional." I left work early that afternoon. I told my boss I had a family emergency, which was technically the truth. I drove back to Pine and River Credit Union, but this time I did not stand in line for a teller. I walked straight to the glass-walled office in the back and asked for Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson had been the branch manager since I was a child. He was a man who wore suspenders and kept a bowl of peppermint candies on his desk. When I sat down, he looked uncomfortable. He knew why I was there. Small towns did not keep secrets well, and Mrs. Gable had likely briefed him the moment I walked in. "Lillian," he said, folding his hands on his desk. "I was distressed to hear about the situation with the account. I want the full transaction log." "Mr. Henderson," I said, keeping my voice level. "And I want copies of the authorization forms, not just the signature page. I want the metadata. I want to know how the request was submitted. We usually require a subpoena for internal communications." He said, "I am the account holder." I said, "I am the executor of the estate that opened this account. If you do not give me the records of how my money was accessed, I will not be filing a subpoena. I will be filing a complaint with the National Credit Union Administration regarding unauthorized access protocols." "Mr. Henderson blinked. He cleared his throat. "I see you have learned a few things working in property management. I have learned that documentation is the only thing that matters." I said. He turned to his computer. For 10 minutes, the only sound in the office was the clicking of his mouse and the hum of the printer. He stood up, walked to the printer, and retrieved a small stack of papers. He hesitated before handing them to me. "Lillian," he said quietly. "We verified the signature. It is Derek's. We have his signature on file from his own accounts. There was no forgery. I know he signed it." I said, "I want to know how he got the form." Mr. Henderson slid the papers across the desk. The request for the addendum, the form that added him to the account 4 years ago, came in via email. We allowed digital submission for existing customers with verified profiles. I looked at the top page. It was a printout of an email chain dated 4 days after Grand's funeral. Subject: Account Addendum. Parker, from Marianne. Parker, Hotmail. Com. My breath hitched. The email address was not Derek's. It was my mother's. "Please see the attached form for Derek Parker to be added to the custodial account." The email read, "He will be handling the branch visits for Lillian moving forward." I looked up at Mr. Henderson. "It came from my mother's email?" "It did," he said. "And since your mother was a joint signer on the original account from 20 years ago, the system flagged it as a trusted source. Derek signed the attachment. But the delivery mechanism was hers." I felt a wave of nausea. It was one thing to suspect my mother knew. It was another thing to hold the proof that she had opened the door for him. She had used her own email, her own credibility, to slide him into the one place Gran had tried to keep safe. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson," I said. I took the papers and walked out into the gray afternoon. The sky was threatening rain. I did not go home. I drove straight to the north side of town, to the neat row of townhouses where my mother lived. Marianne Parker's house was a monument to appearances. The hedges were trimmed into perfect squares. The welcome mat was fresh. The windows sparkled. Inside, I knew, everything would be dusted and arranged in symmetrical lines. It was a house designed to convince the world that the people living inside were perfectly fine. I let myself in with my key. "Mom," I called out. "I am in the kitchen. Honey?" I walked down the hallway. She was standing at the island, chopping vegetables for a salad. She looked up, smiling, but the smile faltered when she saw my face. She set the knife down. "Lillian, is everything okay? You are off work early." I walked up to the island and placed the email printout on the granite counter, right next to the bowl of cucumbers. "You sent it," I said. She looked at the paper. She did not touch it. She didn't have to read it to know what it was. Her shoulders slumped, the tension leaving her body not in a sigh of relief, but in a collapse of defeat. "I was helping him," she said softly. "Helping him?" I repeated. "You helped him steal from me." "It was not stealing, Lillian. It was access. Just access. He said he needed to be on the account in case of emergencies. In case something happened to you. Gran died 4 years ago." "Mom," This email is dated 4 days after the funeral. I was right there. I was handling everything. Why did Derek need access? He said. She stopped, wiping her hands on a dish towel. He said you were overwhelmed. He said you were not good with money. I laughed. It was a sharp, ugly sound. I am not good with money? I am the only person in this family with a savings account. Or I was. Until you gave him the key. Lillian, please, lower your voice. The neighbors. I do not care about the neighbors. I slammed my hand on the counter. The sound made her jump. You authorized it. And then, when he started draining it 6 weeks ago, you knew about that too. Didn't you? I didn't know he was taking all of it, she cried, her eyes filling with tears. The admission hung there, stark and terrible. So you knew he was taking some of it? I asked. He called me, she stammered. He was crying. He said he was in trouble. He asked if I had any money. I told him I didn't. I told him the only liquid cash left was in Grand's account. I told him maybe he could borrow a little, just to get the wolves off his back. A little, I said. I thought he would take $500, maybe 1,000. I told him specifically. Don't hurt Lillian. He promised me he wouldn't. He promised he would put it back before you ever looked at the statement. She looked at me, her eyes pleading for understanding. I didn't want him to get hurt. Lillian, you don't know the pressure he is under. And what about me? I asked. My voice was quiet now. What about my pressure? You are strong, she said. You always have been. You have your job. You have your life together. Derek needs help. He needs us. Us, I said. You mean he needs you to sacrifice me to save him? That is not fair. It is exactly fair. It is the only fair thing about this. I picked up the paper. I am going to get that money back. Mom, every cent. Lillian, don't do anything rash. He is your brother. He is a thief. I said, and you drove the getaway car. I turned and walked out. She called my name. But I didn't stop. I couldn't be in that house anymore. The air felt suffocating, thick with the smell of lemon polish and lies. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, just breathing. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Derek. Lil, come on. I know you're upset. I can scrounge up $2,000 right now. I'll transfer it tonight. Just promise me we're good and you won't tell anyone else about this. I can't handle the drama right now. I stared at the screen. $2,000, less than a quarter of what he took. And the condition attached was silence. It wasn't an apology. It was a bribe. He wasn't trying to make me whole. He was trying to buy a non-disclosure agreement. I typed back, no. Then I blocked his number. Not forever, just for now. I needed clear air to think. The next morning, I took a half day and went to see Noah Ainsley. Noah was a general practice attorney who had an office above the bakery on Main Street. He was young, maybe a few years older than me, with a reputation for being thorough and unpretentious. I had used him once before to review a complicated lease addendum for work. He sat back in his creaky leather chair and listened as I laid out the timeline. I showed him the bank records, the email, and the text message Derek had sent. When I finished, Noah took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Okay, he said. Here is the reality. You have a solid civil case, unauthorized enrichment, conversion of funds. The fact that his name was on the account makes it trickier. But the email from your mother proves the intent was custodial. And his text message offering partial repayment is effectively an admission of debt. So I sue him? I asked. You can, Noah said. But let's look at the mechanics. Small claims court in Ohio has a limit of $6,000. You are owed $9,800, so you would have to file in municipal court. That means filing fees, service of process, and likely an attorney, me or someone else. By the time you get a judgment, you might spend $2,000 or $3,000 in legal costs. And if he doesn't have the money? Exactly. A judgment is just a piece of paper. If he is broke, you can't squeeze blood from a stone. You can garnish wages, but that is a slow, painful process. And if he has other creditors, you get in line. Plus, once you file, it is public record. Anyone can look it up. Your family business becomes town business. I thought about Tessa's question. Do you think he'll ever pay you back if no one else knows? I don't want to sue him yet. I said, I want him to pay me. I want him to feel the weight of it. Noah nodded. He leaned forward. Then you need leverage. And right now, your leverage isn't the law. It is his reputation. But you have to be careful. You can't blackmail him. You can't say, pay me or I will tell your boss. That is extortion. I know. I said, however, Noah continued, you can draft a settlement agreement, a contract. He acknowledges the debt. He agrees to a payment schedule, and you include a default clause. What kind of default clause? Financial penalties are standard, but you can get creative, as long as it is not illegal. I took a notepad out of my purse. Can we include a clause that requires him to acknowledge the debt in front of witnesses if he defaults? Noah raised an eyebrow. A confession clause? An accountability clause, I corrected. If he misses a payment, he has to admit what he did, not to the police, to the family, or to a mediator. Noah tapped his pen on the desk. He looked at me with a mixture of concern and respect. That is unusual. Lillian, is it illegal? No, as long as the parties agree to it, and it doesn't violate public policy. It is essentially a form of arbitration, but he will hate it. He is supposed to hate it. I said, that is the point. We spent the next hour drafting. I wanted it precise. No vague language about loans or assistance. The document stated clearly, repayment of unauthorized withdrawals. We set the total amount, $9,800, plus a flat $500 administrative fee for my time and legal costs. Total, $10,300. We set the timeline, 4 payments of $2,575, due on the 1st of each month, and then, the kicker, Clause 4.2. In the event of a default on any scheduled payment, defined as a delay of more than 48 hours, the debtor agrees to attend a remediation meeting with the creditor and 2 neutral witnesses, where the debtor will verbally acknowledge the cause of the default and the nature of the original debt. It was heavy, it was bureaucratic, and it was exactly what Derek feared most. I unblocked Derek's number and sent a single text. Meet me at Harborlight Diner, 6 p.m. I have a proposal. He replied instantly, on my way. Glad you came around. He thought I was accepting the $2,000. He thought he had won. I arrived at the diner at 5:45. I picked a booth in the back, away from the window. I ordered a coffee and laid the manila envelope containing the 2 copies of the contract on the table. 6 o'clock came and went. At 6:15, the door chimed. Derek walked in. He looked disheveled but handsome, wearing a windbreaker and jeans. He waved at the waitress, calling her by name. He high-fived a guy sitting at the counter. He was the mayor of Harborlight Diner. He slid into the booth opposite me, breathless and smiling. Sorry. Traffic on the bridge was a nightmare, and I had to drop off some stuff for the kids. You know how it is. He reached for my menu. You ordering food? I'm starving. The meatloaf here is actually decent. I am not eating. Derek, I said. He paused, sensing the temperature drop. He put the menu down. Okay, right to business. Look, Lil, I appreciate you meeting me. I have the transfer ready. $2,000. It sends a message, right? Good faith. I pushed the envelope across the table. Open it. He looked at the envelope, then at me. He gave a nervous chuckle. What is this? Did you write me a letter? Just open it. He opened the clasp and pulled out the stapled document. He adjusted his reading glasses, a new affectation I hadn't seen before, and started to read. His smile faded, his brow furrowed. He flipped to the second page. He read Clause 4.2. He looked up. The charm was gone. In its place was a look of pure, unadulterated offense. Is this a joke? He asked. Does it look like a joke? You went to a lawyer? For a family loan? It is not a loan. Derek, a loan is mutual. This is a repayment contract for theft. He slammed the paper down. A few people in the nearby booths looked over. Derek lowered his voice to a hiss. I am not signing this. Unauthorized withdrawals? Debtor? You are treating me like a criminal. You committed a crime, I said calmly. I am giving you a way to settle it without the police involved. And what is this part? He jabbed his finger at the witness clause. I have to confess to strangers if I miss a payment. If you pay on time. The clause never triggers. I said, it is an incentive. It is a trap. He spat. You are trying to set me up. I am trying to ensure you pay me. You have a history of making promises and breaking them. You have a history of 3 different excuses for one theft. I need insurance. Derek stared at me. His eyes were searching my face for the sister he used to know, the one who would fold, the one who would smooth things over. He couldn't find her. Why are you doing this? He asked, his voice quieting down. Why are you trying to humiliate me? I took a sip of my coffee. My hand was steady. I am not trying to humiliate you. Derek, I am trying to make reality unavoidable. You have spent your whole life rewriting reality to fit your needs. You tell Mom one thing. You tell me another. You tell yourself a third thing. This piece of paper? This is the only version of the story that matters now. I slid a pen across the table. You have until tomorrow morning to sign it. If you don't, Noah files the civil suit at the courthouse at 9 a.m., and then the unauthorized withdrawals become public record anyway. He looked at the pen. He looked at the contract. He looked at the door, as if calculating whether he could run. But he knew I had him. He knew that a lawsuit would destroy his credit, his job at Glenmore Logistics, and his nice guy reputation faster than anything else. He picked up the pen. You are cold. Lillian, he said. I never knew you were this cold. I am not cold. Derek, I said. I am just broke, and I am tired of paying for your warmth. He signed it. He pressed down so hard the pen nearly tore the paper. He shoved the copy back at me and stood up. There, are you happy? No, I said honestly. I am not happy at all. He stormed out of the diner. I watched him go. I picked up the contract and checked the signature. It was the same looping scrawl that was on the bank form, but this time, it wasn't taking money away. It was a promise to bring it back. I put the document in my purse and signaled the waitress. I will have the meatloaf. I said, to go. I thought the victory at the diner was real. I thought the ink on the page meant something, but I had forgotten that for Derek, a signature was just a scribble of ink, not a binding of the soul. Less than 12 hours after he walked out of the Harbor Light Diner, I received an email. The subject line was simply, let's be reasonable. I opened it at my desk at Lakebridge Property Group. My hand hovering over the mouse, there was an attachment. It was a PDF titled family_loan_agreement_revised.pdf. The body of the email was brief and dripped with that patronizing tone Derek used when he wanted to sound like the sensible one. Lillian, I have been thinking about that paper you made me sign last night. Honestly, I felt ambushed. You caught me off guard. And I think we can both agree that forcing your brother to sign a legal threat over meatloaf is not exactly the Parker way. I spoke to a friend of mine who knows about contracts, and he said what you wrote up is excessive and borderline harassment. I am not going to let you hold that over my head. However, I am a man of my word. I want to pay you back. I have attached a revised agreement that I am comfortable with. It covers the basics without the drama. Let's just sign this and move on. Love, Derek. I opened the attachment. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. He had removed the default clause. He had removed the witness clause. He had removed the late fees. But the most dangerous change was in the preamble, where I had written repayment of unauthorized withdrawals. Derek had substituted repayment of family assistance loan. I stared at the words, family assistance loan. If I signed this, I would be legally acknowledging that I had lent him the money. I would be validating his lie. I would be erasing the theft and replacing it with a narrative where I was the benevolent sister helping her struggling brother, and he was just a little slow to pay it back. It shifted the timeline. It made the access to the account retroactive permission. I did not reply. I simply dragged the email into the folder titled 9800. By Wednesday, I realized the revised contract was only the first front of his war. The second front was the family rumor mill. I received a text from my Aunt Karen, my father's sister, who lived 2 towns over. She and I usually only spoke on birthdays, but her message was long and laced with passive aggression. "Hi, Lillian. I heard you and Derek are going through a rough patch. I just wanted to remind you that money comes and goes, but family is forever. He is trying so hard with those kids. Being a single dad is impossible these days. I hope you can find it in your heart to be patient. We are all worried about how stressed you seem over finances. Let me know if you need a grocery gift card or something." I stared at the phone, my face burning. A grocery gift card. Derek had not just told them I was demanding money. He had told them I was broke. He had spun a story where I was harassing him not because he stole from me, but because I was desperate and greedy, and the single dad line was his favorite shield. Derek was divorced, yes, but his ex-wife, Sarah, was a pediatric nurse who had the kids 50% of the time. She was stable, kind, and paid for their health insurance. Derek was not a struggling solo parent carrying the weight of the world. He was a co-parent with a very standard custody arrangement, but single dad played better to the aunts. It summoned immediate, uncritical sympathy. He was isolating me. He was painting me as the villain before I even had a chance to speak. Then came the invitation. My mother called on Thursday. Her voice was bright, too bright, brittle like spun sugar. "Lillian, we are having a Sunday dinner. Just a nice family get-together. Roast chicken. Your favorites. Aunt Janice and Aunt Rita are coming, and Cousin Mark is in town. You simply must come." I knew exactly what it was. It was not a dinner. It was an intervention. I should have said no. I should have stayed in my apartment, safe behind my locked door and my mounting evidence. But a cold resolve had settled in my chest. If they wanted to talk about the money, we would talk about the money. I will be there. "Mom," I said, "I spent Saturday preparing." I did not cook a side dish. Instead, I went to the print shop. I printed the transaction logs. I printed the email from my mother authorizing Derek's access. I printed the text messages where Derek offered me $2,000 to stay quiet. I organized them into a clear, chronological timeline, clipped together in a neat stack. I walked into my mother's townhouse at 1 o'clock on Sunday. The air smelled of rosemary and roasted chicken, a scent that usually made me feel safe, but today smelled like a trap. The living room was full. My mother was fluttering around with coasters. Derek was sitting in the big armchair, the one that used to be Dad's, looking somber and weary. Aunt Janice and Aunt Rita were on the sofa, flanking him like bodyguards. Cousin Mark stood by the fireplace, checking his watch. Mark was the wild card. He was a few years older than me, a no-nonsense portfolio manager who worked in Columbus. He understood numbers. He understood fraud. When I walked in, the conversation died instantly. "Hi, everyone," I said, keeping my voice light. "Lillian," Aunt Janice said, standing up to hug me. The hug was stiff. "You look tired?" "Dear, I am fine." Aunt Janice. We sat down to eat. The first 20 minutes were an exercise in excruciating small talk. We discussed the weather. We discussed the pothole situation on Main Street. We discussed Mark's new BMW. Derek was quiet, pushing peas around his plate with the air of a martyr. Then, as the plates were being cleared, Aunt Rita cleared her throat. She was the matriarch of the family, the one who decided what was true and what was not. "Lillian," she said, folding her napkin, "we wanted to talk to you about this business with Derek." I put my fork down. "Here we go. What business is that?" I asked. "The loan?" Rita said. "Derek told us you are demanding he pay it all back immediately. He said you are threatening lawyers." I looked at Derek. He refused to meet my eyes. He was staring at the tablecloth, shaking his head slightly as if pained by my cruelty. "He told you it was a loan?" I asked. "Well, of course it was," Marianne interjected quickly, coming in from the kitchen with a pie. Derek needed help. Family helps family. He didn't ask for help. I said, "He took it." Derek looked up then, his eyes wet with performed emotion. "I made mistakes." "Lil," he said, his voice trembling just the right amount. "I was overwhelmed. Things got tight. I didn't handle the communication well, and I own that. I am sorry I didn't ask first, but I was drowning." It was a beautiful non-apology, vague, emotional, devoid of facts. "What were you drowning in?" "Derek?" I asked. "Life," he said, spreading his hands. "The house? The kids? Just everything." "That is not an answer." I said, "Why do you need to pick it apart?" Aunt Janice snapped. "He said he is sorry. He said he will pay you back when he gets on his feet. Why are you kicking him when he is down? You have a good job. You don't have children to support. Why are you so obsessed with this money?" I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. Obsessed. I reached into my tote bag and pulled out the stack of papers. "I am not obsessed with the money," I said, my voice steady. "I am obsessed with the truth, and since we are all here, discussing my finances, I think you should see exactly what we are talking about." I placed the stack in the center of the table, right next to the apple pie. "What is this?" Aunt Rita asked, eyeing the papers like they were radioactive. "That is the transaction log," I said. I pointed to the first page. 6 weeks ago, Derek withdrew $3,000. 4 weeks ago, another $3,000. 5 days ago, the remaining balance. He didn't take this money to keep the lights on. Janice, he emptied the account in chunks. Derek shifted in his seat. "It was for bills," he insisted. "Which bills?" I asked. I turned to the next page. "This is the form authorizing his access." It was emailed from Mom's account 4 days after Gran's funeral. The room went silent. Marianne gasped softly. "Mom," Aunt Rita said, looking at her sister. "You did this?" I was helping him." Marianne stammered. I looked at Cousin Mark. He had moved from the fireplace to the table. He picked up the transaction log. His eyes scanned the columns, his professional brain kicking in. "Wait," Mark said. He frowned. "These are counter withdrawals." "Cash?" "Yes," I said. Mark looked at Derek. His expression was not sympathetic. It was confused. "Derek, why would you take nearly $10,000 in cash? If you were paying a mortgage or a car repair, you would do a transfer or write a check. You don't walk out with stacks of hundreds unless you're trying to leave no paper trail." Derek's face flushed a deep, blotchy red. I deposited it into my other account," he lied. Mark narrowed his eyes. "Then show us the deposit slip. If you moved it to your checking account to pay bills, there is a record. Pull it up on your phone right now." "I don't have to show you my personal banking," Derek snapped. "You do if you want us to believe this was for bills," Mark said coolly. "Taking that much cash is highly irregular. Derek, it triggers a currency transaction report if it is over 10,000. So you kept it just under. That looks structured. That looks like you were avoiding flags." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The aunts looked from Mark to Derek. The narrative of the overwhelmed single dad was cracking under the weight of financial logic. "I am not on trial here," Derek shouted, slamming his hand on the table. The silverware jumped. He stood up, his chair scraping violently against the floor. "You are acting like a lawyer. Lillian, you just want a stage. You want to humiliate me in front of everyone because you are jealous that Mom helps me and not you." Marianne stood up, wringing her hands. "Stop it. Please, stop it. We are a family." I stayed seated. "We are a family that is missing $10,000, I said. "And until Derek signs the agreement I wrote, the one with the witness clause, I will not stop asking where it went." Derek looked around the room. He saw the doubt in Mark's eyes. He saw the confusion in Aunt Rita's face. He had lost the room. He turned and stormed out the back door into the garden. Marianne started to cry. Aunt Janice went to comfort her, shooting me a look of pure venom, as if I were the one who had caused the tears. I stood up. "I am going to go." I said, "Thank you for the chicken." "Mom," I walked out the front door. The cool air felt like a blessing after the stifling heat of the dining room. I walked to my car, my keys in my hand, my heart hammering against my ribs. I was unlocking the door when I heard footsteps crunching on the gravel behind me. "You think you are so smart." I turned. Derek was standing there. He had come around the side of the house. His face was pale, his eyes wide and wild. He didn't look charming anymore. He looked cornered. "I am smart." "Derek," I said, "smart enough to keep receipts." He took a step closer. He lowered his voice to a hiss. "You are ruining my life. Lillian, you don't know what you are doing. I am getting my money back. It is not about the money," he whispered, looking over his shoulder to make sure no one was on the porch. "You have to stop pushing. You have to stop asking questions." "Why?" I asked. "Why cash?" "Derek?" Mark was right. Why cash? He ran a hand through his hair, gripping the strands as if he wanted to pull them out. "Because I owe people, okay?" "What people?" "Not a bank," he said. "Not a credit card company. People who don't send letters. People who aren't patient." I stared at him. The melodrama of it seemed absurd, like something from a bad movie. But the sweat on his upper lip was real. "Gambling?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just looked at me with a desperate intensity. "I needed that money to buy time. And now you are making a scene, and you are going to get me fired. And if I lose my job, I can't pay them. And if I can't pay them..." He stopped. "If you can't pay them..." "What?" "Just stop. Lillian, please, for your own sake, stay out of it." He turned and walked back toward the house, his shoulders hunched. I got into my car and locked the doors. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't put the key in the ignition. I sat there for 5 minutes, breathing in and out, watching the front door of my mother's house. Derek was in trouble, real trouble. I drove home, but the fear didn't leave me. It sat in the passenger seat. If Derek was indebted to loan sharks or bookies, that was dangerous. But my mind, trained by years of property management, snagged on something else. If I lose my job, Derek worked for Glenmore Logistics. It was a massive supply chain company. They handled high-value freight. Electronics, pharmaceuticals, luxury goods. It was a job that required security clearance and bonding. If Derek was in debt to dangerous people, he was a security risk, and he had mentioned buying time. I got home and went straight to my laptop. I didn't turn on the lights. The glow of the screen was the only illumination in the apartment. I didn't hack anything. I didn't know how to hack, but I knew how to search. I knew that people left digital footprints everywhere, even when they tried not to. I started with the basics: public court records, nothing criminal, just the divorce filings from 3 years ago. Then I searched for his email address, the one he used for personal stuff, not the one he used for the family. I found a username on a forum for sports betting. dpark88. Active until 6 months ago, then silent. That tracked with the gambling theory. But $10,000 was a lot of bad bets for a guy who made a mid-level salary. I tried his phone number. It popped up on a cached page for Craigslist and another for Facebook Marketplace. He had been selling things, a lot of things: brand new iPad Pro, sealed box, $600, Sony headphones, in box, $200, Dyson vacuum, never opened, $300. The dates went back 2 years. I frowned. Where was he getting brand new? Sealed electronics? I dug deeper. I searched his name in the Ohio Secretary of State business search. There it was. Parker Avenue Resale, LLC, registered agent, Derek Parker. Status: dissolved. Failure to file. Date of dissolution: 3 months ago. He had a business, a side hustle. I took the name of the LLC and plugged it into Google. The first 3 results were generic business listings. The 4th result was a link to a consumer complaint board. Do not buy from Parker Avenue Resale. Posted by user J. Miller. I ordered a gaming console 3 weeks ago. He sent me a tracking number that never updated. Now he's ghosting me. Scammer. I scrolled down. There were more. Took my money via Zelle and never shipped the item. Claimed the package was lost. Won't refund. This guy is a thief. I sat back in my chair. He wasn't just gambling. He was running a retail scam. Or maybe he had started out legitimate, trying to flip items, and then got behind. Maybe he sold inventory he didn't have to cover the debts from the bets. But where did he get the inventory in the first place? Glenmore Logistics. The thought arrived cold and clear. He worked in a warehouse that moved exactly these kinds of items, if he was stealing stock, or falling off the truck inventory, and selling it through his LLC. That was grand larceny. That was prison time. And if the business had dissolved 3 months ago, and the complaints were piling up, and he had just drained my grandmother's account, he was plugging holes. He was using Grand's money to refund angry customers who were threatening to go to the police, or he was paying off someone who knew what he was doing. I owe people who aren't a bank. Maybe he didn't mean loan sharks. Maybe he meant a partner, someone who had helped him move the goods and wasn't getting their cut. I realized then that the $9,800 wasn't just about greed, it was about survival. Derek was standing on a trap door, and the rope was fraying. If I sued him, the court would look at his finances. They would find the LLC. They would find the unexplained cash. The discovery process would expose him to Glenmore Logistics. He would lose his job and likely go to jail. He knew that. That was why he was terrified of court. But he was also terrified of me. I looked at the screen. I had him. I had him so completely it was almost frightening. I didn't need a judge. I didn't need a lawyer. I had his reputation. Derek Parker, the good guy, the volunteer, the devoted dad, the man whose entire social standing in Briar Glen depended on being seen as trustworthy. If I exposed the theft of the savings, it was a family dispute. People might take his side. But if I connected it to the LLC, to the scams, to the potential theft from his employer, he would be finished. I closed the laptop. I wasn't going to call the police. That would destroy the family. Marianne would never survive the shame of her son in handcuffs. No. I needed a way to make him pay that kept him out of jail, but put him in a prison of his own making. I needed a repayment plan that used his fear against him. I pulled out a fresh legal pad. I wrote at the top, the public repayment protocol. He wanted to hide? I would make him stand in the light. He wanted to use his reputation as a shield? I would turn it into a weapon. I began to draft the new terms. They were simple, they were brutal, and they were non-negotiable. I would not send this by email. I would not discuss this over meatloaf. I would send him a formal demand letter. And I would give him exactly one choice: play by my rules, in the open, or watch his entire house of cards burn to the ground. The twice-over clause Noah had mentioned as a joke? I wrote it down in pen. Clause 5. Escalation of debt. Failure to adhere to the schedule will result in a penalty of 200% of the remaining balance. And then, the kicker, the leverage that would ensure he never, ever missed a payment again. Clause 6. Conditional confidentiality. The creditor, Lillian Parker, agrees to refrain from contacting the debtor's employer, Glenmore Logistics, regarding the nature of the debtor's external business activities, provided, and only provided, that the debtor remains in full compliance with this agreement. I stared at the clause. It was blackmail, dressed up in a suit and tie. Noah would probably tell me not to send it, but Noah didn't know what I knew. He didn't know that my brother wasn't just a bad borrower. He was a man running out of road. I turned off the desk lamp. The room plunged into darkness. The demand letter did not look like a weapon. It sat on Noah Ainsley's mahogany desk. A single sheaf of high-bond paper, crisp and white, folded into thirds. It looked like a lease renewal or a standard contract update, the kind of boring administrative debris I generated every day at work. But as I watched Noah slide it into the heavy cardboard envelope marked Certified Mail, Return Receipt Requested, I felt a grim satisfaction. This was not a text message. This was not a tearful argument over a Sunday roast. This was the machinery of the law. Grinding into gear. It is ready to go, Noah said, sealing the flap. We are demanding the full $9,800, plus $500 in legal fees. We are giving him 7 days to respond. If he ignores it, we file the complaint in civil court on day 8. And if he responds? I asked. Noah tapped the envelope. Then we offer the settlement. We keep it out of court, but only if he signs the binding agreement, the one with teeth. I walked out of Noah's office and into the bright, hard sunlight of Tuesday afternoon. I felt lighter, but also colder. I had crossed a line. I had taken a private family wound and handed it to the state to heal. Or if not to heal, then at least to stitch up. The reaction was immediate. Derek did not text me. He did not call me. He called Noah. 2 days later, I was back in the office above the bakery. Noah looked amused. He is panicking, Noah said, leaning back in his chair. He called me 3 times yesterday. He kept asking if this was public record yet. He is terrified his employer will find out. Good. I said, he is offering a payment plan. Noah continued. He wants to pay $500 a month. He says that is all he can afford. That would take nearly 2 years. I calculated. That is not acceptable. I agree. I told him we need a substantial lump sum up front. But there is a sticking point. He refuses to sign the agreement if it includes the acknowledgement clause. He says he will not admit to, and I quote, theft or unauthorized access in writing. He says it makes him liable for criminal prosecution. He is liable for criminal prosecution because he did it. I said, Noah nodded. Technically, yes, but in a civil settlement, we can word it differently. However, you were clear. Lillian, you wanted him to say it. I don't just want him to pay me. Noah, I want him to know that I know. I want the gaslighting to stop. If he pays me back but keeps telling everyone he just borrowed it, and I am being unreasonable, then I haven't really won. I have just been reimbursed. Noah steepled his fingers. Then we escalate the condition. We take the acknowledgement out of the written contract, so he doesn't feel like he is signing a confession for the police. But we replace it with a verbal requirement. What kind of requirement? A recorded statement. Noah said, we schedule a formal settlement meeting, not a dinner, a meeting, you, him, me, maybe a neutral mediator or a family member as a witness. He reads a factual statement about the withdrawal. We record it. The recording stays sealed unless he defaults on the payments. I thought about it. It was elegant. It gave him a way to save face on paper. But it forced him to speak the truth in the room. Set it up, I said. The meeting was scheduled for Saturday morning at the Briar Glen Community Center. We rented small conference room B, a sterile box with cinder block walls and a smell of floor wax. It was neutral ground. It was not my mother's kitchen. It was not the diner. It was a place where business was done. On Friday night, my mother showed up at my apartment. I had not invited her. She stood in the hallway, clutching her purse, looking smaller and older than I had ever seen her. Lillian, can I come in? She asked. I stepped back to let her pass. She walked into the living room but didn't sit down. She looked at the laptop on my coffee table, then at the stack of files on my desk. Derek called me. She said, I assumed he would. He says you are going to record him, she said. Her voice trembled. He says you are treating him like a deposition. Lillian, he is your brother. Why do you need a recording? Why can't you just take his word? Because his word is worth nothing. Mom, I said. He looked me in the eye and told me he used the money for a car repair. Then he told me it was a mortgage fee. Then he told the family it was for the children. I don't know what the truth is, and I'm tired of guessing. But a recording? She pleaded. What if it gets out? What if his job hears it? It won't get out unless he stops paying. I said, it is insurance. It is cruel. She snapped. A flash of her old defensive anger surfacing. You are enjoying this. You are enjoying making him squirm. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had raised me. The woman who had taught me to be polite, to be quiet, to be good. I realized, with a sudden clarity, that she wasn't protecting Derek because she loved him more. She was protecting him because his failure was her failure. If Derek was a thief, then she was the mother of a thief. If Derek was a liar, she was the mother of a liar. She needed him to be the victim so she could remain the martyr. I am not enjoying it, I said quietly. I hate it. I hate that I have to spend my evenings auditing my own family. I hate that I have to pay a lawyer to talk to my brother. But I am not the one who created this situation. Please, Lillian, just drop the recording requirement. He will pay you. I will make sure of it. You can't make sure of anything. Mom, I said, you authorized the access 4 years ago. And you didn't even know he had drained the account until I told you. You have no control over him. She flinched as if I had slapped her. You have been protecting him with silence for 30 years, I said. You protected him when he failed his classes. You protected him when he got divorced. You protected him when he took the money. You think silence is love. It isn't. It is just a hiding place. I walked to the door and opened it. I am done with silence. Mom, you have been protecting him with silence. I am protecting myself with facts. She stared at me for a long moment. She looked like she wanted to argue, to cry, to guilt me into submission, but something in my face must have told her that the old keys didn't fit this lock anymore. She walked out without another word. Saturday morning was overcast, the sky a flat, heavy gray. I arrived at the community center 10 minutes early. Noah was already there, setting up a small digital recorder on the center of the beige laminate table. He will be here, Noah said. I spoke to him this morning. He is not happy, but he is coming. At 10 o'clock sharp, the door opened. Derek walked in. He was wearing a suit, an ill-fitting gray suit I hadn't seen him wear since a cousin's wedding 3 years ago. He looked like he was going to court. Behind him walked our mother. I had not expected her to come. Noah looked at me, raising an eyebrow. I gave a small nod. Let her witness it. Derek didn't look at me. He sat down on the opposite side of the table. Marianne sat next to him, placing a hand on his arm. She looked pale. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Good morning, Noah said, his voice professional and calm. We are here to finalize the settlement agreement regarding the outstanding debt of $9,800 owed to the estate of Eleanor Vance. With Lillian Parker as the beneficiary, Derek cleared his throat. Let's just get this over with, he muttered. Noah pushed a document across the table. This is the payment schedule. An initial lump sum of $3,000, payable today via cashier's check. The remaining balance to be paid in monthly installments of $1,000 over the next 7 months. Is that correct? Derek glanced at the paper. Yeah, that's what we discussed. And the penalty clause. Noah continued. Clause 5. If you miss 2 consecutive payments, or if any payment is more than 30 days late, the total remaining balance doubles immediately, and the creditor, Lillian, reserves the right to seek collection through any legal means, including wage garnishment and public filing. Derek's jaw tightened. Doubles? He asked. That is loan shark stuff. It is a deterrent. Noah said, it is designed to ensure we don't have to chase you. If you pay on time, you never pay an extra cent. Derek picked up the pen. He looked at the paper, then at me. You really don't trust me at all, do you? I didn't answer. I just watched him. He signed the paper. Now, Noah said, sliding the recorder forward. As agreed. We need the statement of acknowledgement. This is the condition for sealing the civil complaint. Noah pressed the red button. A tiny light blinked on. State your name and the date. Noah said. Derek took a breath. He looked at a piece of paper he had pulled from his pocket. He had written something down. My name is Derek Parker. Today is October 14th. Go ahead, Noah said. Derek looked at the paper. He started to read, his voice gaining a sudden, theatrical cadence. I want to say that this has been a very difficult year for me. My mental health has not been where it needs to be. The pressure of the divorce, the economy, the responsibilities of fatherhood, it all became too much. I made some decisions that were not clear-headed. I was in a fog. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I was just trying to survive. I deeply regret that my actions caused stress for my sister. He stopped and looked up, expecting approval. It was the same speech he had given at the dinner. It was a cloud of words designed to obscure the action. Decisions were made. I was in a fog. Passive voice. Victimhood. Marianne reached over and patted his hand. That was beautiful. Derek, she whispered. I felt a cold rage tighten my chest. He wasn't doing it. He was spinning it again. No, I said. The word cut through the room like a glass shattering. Derek looked at me. What? That is not the statement, I said. I looked at Noah. Noah nodded. Lillian is right. Derek, we need a factual acknowledgement of the transaction, not an explanation of your feelings. Derek threw his hands up. I just apologized. What more do you want? Blood? I want the truth. I said. I leaned forward. The table was small, and I was close enough to smell the stale coffee on his breath. Say what you did, Derek. Use the words, I withdrew the money from Lillian's account, and then we can talk about pressure. He glared at me. I'm not saying that. Then we are done. I said. I stood up. Noah, you can file the complaint on Monday morning. Wait. Marianne cried out. Lillian, sit down. Derek looked at me standing there. He looked at the door. He knew what a lawsuit meant. He knew about the public records. He knew about his job. Fine, he snapped. Sit down. I sat. Noah pressed the button on the recorder again. Go ahead. Derek stared at the little red light. He swallowed. His Adam's apple bobbed. He looked down at the table, stripping away the performance, stripping away the charm, for the first time in his life. He looked small. I withdrew the money from Lillian's account, he said. His voice cracked on the word, account. How much? I asked. $9,800. And did you have permission to take it? I asked. He looked up at me then. There was hate in his eyes. Pure, unvarnished hate. But behind the hate, there was defeat. No, he whispered. Thank you, Noah said. He clicked the recorder off. The silence that followed was heavy. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the silence of a structure collapsing. Marianne was staring at Derek as if she had never seen him before. Hearing him say the words, I withdrew the money. I did not have permission. Stripped away her ability to pretend it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't a loan. It wasn't a mistake. It was an act. Derek stood up abruptly. He pulled a cashier's check from his jacket pocket and threw it on the table. There, $3,000. Are you happy now? I picked up the check. I checked the amount. I checked the date. I am satisfied. I said. He walked out. Marianne followed him. But at the door, she paused. She looked back at me. She didn't say goodbye. She just looked at me with a profound sadness, as if I were the one who was lost. For the next few weeks, my life returned to a strange, hollow normalcy. The payments arrived. On the 1st of November, a check for $1,000 appeared in my mailbox. On the 1st of December, another check. I deposited them into a new account at a different bank. I watched the balance grow. $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. I should have felt triumphant. I had won. I had forced the unstoppable force of my brother's narcissism to yield to the immovable object of my documentation. But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt grief. The family was fractured. I wasn't invited to Thanksgiving. I saw photos on social media. Derek, the kids, Mom, the aunts, all smiling around a turkey. I was the ghost in the machine. I was the one who had made things difficult. I was the one who had lawyered up. I spent Thanksgiving alone, ordering Chinese takeout and watching old movies. I told myself it was the price of dignity. I told myself I would rather be alone with my truth than crowded by their lies. But it was hard. The silence I had fought for was now the silence I lived in. Then, in mid-December, the other shoe dropped. I was at my desk at Lakebridge Property, reviewing the year-end maintenance budgets, when my Outlook calendar chimed. A meeting invite popped up. Subject: Urgent personnel matter from David Ross, Director of HR. Time: now. My stomach turned over. Urgent personnel matter was never good. I walked down the hall to the HR suite. The carpet seemed to swallow the sound of my footsteps. David Ross was a stern man who always looked like he was smelling something unpleasant. He was sitting behind his desk with a file open. Lillian, Please close the door. I sat down. Is something wrong? I asked. David adjusted his glasses. We received a complaint. Lillian, an anonymous whistleblower complaint regarding your handling of the tenant improvement funds for the Oakwood project. I stared at him. The Oakwood project was my pride and joy. I had managed the renovation of 50 units under budget and ahead of schedule. That is impossible, I said. Every cent is documented. You have my spreadsheets. You have the invoices. The complaint is quite specific. David said. He picked up a piece of paper. It alleges that you steered contracts to vendors who offered kickbacks, and that you have a pattern of, and I am reading here, feeling entitled to company money as if she owns it. The phrase hit me like a physical blow. She thinks she owns money. She is money obsessed. It was the same language Derek had used. It was the specific, twisted syntax of his resentment. May I see the complaint? I asked. I cannot show you the original, as it was submitted through our ethics hotline portal, David said. But we have to investigate. It is company policy. We will need to audit the Oakwood files. It will take a few weeks. Until then, he hesitated. Until then, we are going to have to place you on administrative leave. Paid, of course, but you will need to hand over your badge and your laptop. I felt the blood drain from my face. Administrative leave? For an anonymous lie? It is protocol. Lillian, given the nature of the accusation involving financial malfeasance, we have to be careful. I handed over my badge. I handed over my laptop. I walked out of the building carrying my personal items in a cardboard box. The classic image of corporate disgrace. I sat in my car in the parking garage and screamed. I screamed until my throat was raw. It was him. I knew it was him. I drove to Tessa's apartment. It was the middle of the day, but she was off shift. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside. I told her everything. I told her about the meeting, the recording, the payments, and now this. He is trying to break you, Tessa said, handing me a mug of tea. She was pacing the living room. It is classic retaliation. You cornered him. So now he is coming for the thing you value most. Your reputation, your job. But how? I asked. He doesn't know anything about the Oakwood project. He doesn't need to know facts, Lillian. He just needs to know keywords. He probably heard you talking about work over the years. He knows you handle budgets. He threw a grenade into the room just to see if it would blow up. And it did. I called Noah. I need to know if I can prove it was him. I said. Noah's voice was grim. Anonymous ethics hotlines are designed to be anonymous. Lillian, unless he was stupid enough to send it from his own IP address, which I doubt, he probably used a library computer or a VPN, it is going to be very hard to tie it to him legally. So he just gets away with it? For now. Noah said, But Lillian, this tells us something important. What? It tells us the settlement agreement is working. He is lashing out because he is feeling the pressure. He is trying to get you to back off. He wants you to call him and say, let's forget the double payment clause. Just stop ruining my life. He wants control back. I said, exactly. I hung up the phone. I looked at the cardboard box of my belongings on Tessa's floor. Derek thought he had made a clever move. He thought that by attacking my job, he would make me vulnerable. He thought I would crumble, but he had made a fatal miscalculation. He had attacked my integrity. He had attacked the one thing I had built entirely on my own. The one thing that had nothing to do with him or Gran or the family. I wasn't going to crumble. I looked at Tessa. I need to check the mail. I said, what? The mail? If he is focused on attacking me, he might be slipping up on the payments. I drove to my apartment. I opened the mailbox. It was December 15th. The payment was due on the 1st. There was no check. I checked my bank account online. No deposit. He had missed a payment. He was so busy crafting his revenge that he had forgotten the one thing that actually kept him safe. Or maybe he thought that because I was now under investigation, I wouldn't have the strength to enforce the contract. He was wrong. I went to my desk. I didn't have my work laptop, but I had my personal one. I opened the file. Clause 5. Escalation of debt. He had missed one. If he missed one more, or if this one went 30 days late, The debt doubled. I didn't call him to remind him. I didn't text him. I waited. I spent Christmas alone, not in sadness, but in a vigil. I watched the calendar. December 20th, no check. December 25th, no check. December 30th, no check. January 1st arrived. The next payment was due. No check. That was two missed payments. I sat at my desk. The winter sun was streaming in, cold and bright. The debt was now $19,600, and the clause about public acknowledgement was no longer just a threat. It was a mandate. I picked up my phone and dialed Noah. He missed the second payment, I said. I could hear Noah exhale slowly. Are you sure? I have the bank records. Nothing. Okay, Noah said. Then we trigger the clause. Do you want to send the demand for the double amount? Yes, I said. But not just the demand. I want the rest of it. The rest of it? The public acknowledgement, the third-party oversight. I want it all. Noah. He tried to take my job. I am going to take his shadow. I hung up. I looked at the folder on my desk. The public repayment protocol. Derek had wanted a war. He had wanted to drag me down into the mud with him. He didn't realize that I had spent my entire life learning how to build foundations in the mud. He was about to find out that the double repayment wasn't just about money. It was about the cost of lies. And the price was going up. The notification came on a Tuesday, carried by a process server I had hired for $80. I did not trust the mail anymore. I did not trust the digital void of email. I wanted a human being to hand a physical envelope to my brother, look him in the eye, and confirm that reality had arrived on his doorstep. The trigger for the double repayment clause was simple math. Derek had missed the January payment. He had sent a frantic text about a payroll glitch at Glenmore Logistics, claiming the new system had dropped his direct deposit and it would be sorted in 48 hours. I had waited. 48 hours became a week. A week became 2. Then the February date passed. Silence. The agreement was binary. It did not care about payroll glitches. It did not care about intentions. It cared about dates. Clause 5 was now active. The debt was no longer $9,800. It was $19,600. And the repayment terms were no longer private. I sat in my apartment, the silence amplifying the ticking of the clock on the wall. I had my personal laptop open, the spreadsheet glowing with the new total. It felt grotesque. Looking at that number, it was almost $20,000. It was enough to buy a new car. It was enough to put a down payment on a house. To Derek, it must have looked like a death sentence. I expected rage. I expected a phone call where he screamed that I was a predator, that I was trying to bleed him dry. I did not expect the knock on my door at 10 o'clock at night. It was a weak knock, tentative, like a child asking for water. I looked through the peephole. Derek was leaning against the doorframe. He looked terrible. His skin was gray, the color of wet ash. His eyes were rimmed with red, and he hadn't shaved in days. He wasn't wearing his usual armor of a collared shirt and confidence. He was wearing a hooded sweatshirt and jeans that looked slept in. I unlocked the door but left the chain on. What do you want? Derek? He looked at me through the crack. There was no anger in his face, just a terrifying, hollow exhaustion. Please, Lil, let me in. I have nowhere else to go. I hesitated. The last time I had seen him, he had looked at me with pure hate. But the man standing in the hallway didn't look dangerous. He looked hunted. I undid the chain and opened the door. He walked in and collapsed onto my sofa. He didn't take off his shoes. He put his head in his hands and sat there, his shoulders shaking. I stayed standing by the door, my arms crossed, the claws triggered. Derek, I said, I sent the notice today. You owe $19,600. I know. He mumbled into his hands. I know. So why are you here? To ask for another extension? There are no more extensions. He looked up. His eyes were wide and swimming with panic. It is not about the extension. Lillian, it is about Colin. Who is Colin? Colin Wren. He said, my partner, or my ex-partner. I remembered the name from my research. I remembered the vague sense of a second person involved in the Parker Avenue resale disaster. "The guy from the LLC?" I asked. Derek nodded. "We started the business together. He put up the capital for the initial inventory. I was supposed to handle the logistics and the sales. It worked for a while. But then you started gambling." I said. He flinched. "I borrowed against the inventory," he corrected. Using that same slippery language, I thought I could turn it over quick, but the market slowed down, and the bets didn't hit. And suddenly we had orders we couldn't fill. I used Grand's money to pay off the angriest customers so they wouldn't report us. And Colin? He didn't know. Derek whispered. He thought the inventory was still there. He thought the money was in the operating account. When the LLC dissolved, he started asking for his share of the liquidation. How much? $12,000? I did the math. The $9,800 he took from Gran, the $12,000 he owed Colin. He found out. Derek said. He found out I used the customer refunds to cover my own tracks. He says I stole his investment. Did you? Yes. The word hung in the room. And now? I asked. Now he is texting me every hour. He says if I don't pay him by Friday, he is going to go public. He says he is going to live stream the whole thing. He is going to tag Glenmore Logistics. He is going to tag the school board. He is going to tag everyone. Lillian. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. If he does that, I am dead. I lose the job. I lose the custody arrangement. Sarah will take the kids full time. I will be unemployable. He stood up and walked toward me, his hands out. Lillian, you have to help me. I can't pay you the double amount. I can't even pay Colin. You have savings. You have good credit. If you could just loan me the $12,000 to shut Colin up, I promise I will pay you back every cent of the double judgment. I will sign whatever you want. Just don't let him blow up my life. I looked at my brother. I saw the terror in him, and part of me, the part that remembered him teaching me to ride a bike, the part that remembered him protecting me from bullies on the playground, wanted to fix it. It would be so easy to write a check. It would be so easy to make the fear go away. But then I remembered the anonymous complaint to my HR department. I remembered the weeks of administrative leave. I remembered the feeling of being escorted out of my own office because he wanted to teach me a lesson about control. I stepped back. No, I said. He froze. What? I said no. I am not paying Colin Wren. I am not paying for your failed business or your stolen inventory. Lillian, please. He will destroy me. Then you better pay him, I said. With what? I have nothing. Sell the truck. I said, sell your golf clubs. Sell the electronics you have stashed in your garage. I don't care. Derek, but I am not your bank anymore. His face twisted. The pathetic beggar vanished, replaced by the cornered narcissist. You are heartless, he spat. You are actually enjoying this. You want to see me fail. I don't want to see you fail, I said calmly. I want to see you take responsibility. There is a difference. He paced the room, running his hands through his hair. I can't pay him. I can't. Then he will expose you. I said, and you will have to deal with that. He stopped pacing. He looked at me with a strange, calculating expression. There is one other option, he said softly. What? Mom. I felt a cold chill go down my spine. Leave her out of this. Derek, she has equity, he said, his voice gaining speed. The townhouse. She has owned it for 20 years. There is at least $100,000 of equity in it. If she takes out a home equity line of credit, she could cover Colin and pay you the first installment. You are not serious. It is the only way. It saves the family name. It saves my job. She would do it. Lillian. She would do it for me. He turned and ran out the door. Derek! I shouted. He didn't stop. I heard his heavy footsteps pounding down the stairs. I grabbed my keys and my coat. I didn't even lock my apartment door. I just ran. I drove to my mother's house faster than I had ever driven in my life. I knew exactly what he was going to do. He was going to use fear. He was going to weaponize her love for him. He was going to tell her that if she didn't sign the papers, her grandchildren would starve and her son would go to prison. I pulled into the driveway. Derek's truck was already there, parked crookedly on the lawn. The front door was open. I ran inside. They were in the kitchen. Derek was pacing, shouting, his arms waving in the air. Marianne was sitting at the kitchen table, her head in her hands, sobbing. "It is just a signature." "Mom!" he was yelling. "You just sign the paper. The bank gives us the check, and it all goes away. I will pay the monthly note on the loan. You won't have to pay a dime." I walked into the room. He is lying. "Mom," I said. Derek spun around. "Get out." "Lillian, this doesn't concern you. It concerns me because he is asking you to pay me with your house." I said. I walked over to the table and put my hand on Marianne's shoulder. She was shaking violently. "He won't pay the note." "Mom," I said, "just like he didn't pay the credit union, just like he didn't pay Colin, and then the bank will take your house." Marianne looked up. Her face was ravaged by tears. She looked at Derek, then at me. "I can't," she whispered. "Of course you can," Derek shouted. "You have the equity. The market is up." "No," Marianne said. Her voice was louder this time. "I can't." "Why not?" Derek demanded. "Do you want me to lose everything?" "Because I don't have it," she screamed. The scream silenced the room. It was a raw, primal sound that I had never heard come out of my mother's mouth. She stood up, trembling, and walked to the drawer where she kept the junk mail. She pulled out a stack of envelopes and threw them on the table. They slid across the polished wood, spilling over the edge. Capital One. Discover. Chase. Collection notices. I looked at the top one. Past due. $4,000. I looked at the next. Final notice. I am maxed out. She sobbed. I am drowning. Derek, I have been drowning for 5 years. We stared at her. Why? I asked. Mom, your pension? The house is paid off. I spent it on him, she cried, pointing a shaking finger at Derek. Derek took a step back. What are you talking about? You gave me a few hundred here and there. A few hundred? She laughed. A hysterical, wet sound. I paid your legal fees for the divorce. I paid your rent when you moved out. I paid for the kids' braces because you said you were short. I have 5 credit cards, and they are all maxed out because I have been terrified to tell you no. She collapsed back into the chair. I was afraid, she whispered. I was afraid that if I didn't give you the money, you would get angry. You would stop bringing the kids. You would cut me out. So I just kept signing things, and now I have nothing left. I looked at the pile of bills. The small bailouts she had admitted to earlier weren't small. They were catastrophic. She had mortgaged her own golden years to keep his ship afloat. Derek stared at the bills. He looked like he had been punched in the stomach. I didn't know it was that bad, he stammered. Because you didn't ask. I said coldly, you never ask. Derek, you just take... I looked at my mother. She was broken. The carefully maintained facade of the perfect, supportive matriarch had shattered, revealing a terrified woman who had bought her son's love with credit she couldn't afford. This stops now. I said. I turned to Derek. Mom is not paying Colin, and she is not paying me. Then who? Derek asked, his voice weak. You are, I said, and we are going to do it my way. No more side deals. No more frantic cash grabs. We are going to make this official. I pulled out my phone. I am calling the Briar Glen Restorative Mediation Services. We are going to set up a formal debt restructuring. It is a diversion program. It keeps you out of court, but it puts you in the system. I don't want to go to mediation. Derek said, It's humiliating. It is better than prison. I said, and it is better than Colin Wren live streaming your fraud. Why would Colin agree to wait? Derek asked. Because I will talk to him. I said, I will tell him that if he waits 1 week, he gets a guaranteed payment schedule supervised by a mediator. If he blows you up now, he gets nothing because you will be fired and bankrupt. Derek looked at the bills on the table. He looked at his mother, who was still weeping into her hands. He realized, finally, that the well was dry. There was no one left to save him but the sister he had tried to rob. Fine, he whispered. Set it up. The mediation took place 4 days later. It was held in a different room than the previous meeting. This wasn't a cold community center rental. This was a dedicated office with soft lighting and comfortable chairs arranged in a circle. But the comfort was deceptive. The process was rigorous. The mediator was a woman named Sarah Jenkins. She was a retired judge with eyes that saw everything. 2 witnesses were present, a notary public and a representative from the mediation service. Derek sat on one side of the circle. I sat on the other. This was the first public repayment. The agreement I had drafted, the one triggered by the double clause, required that the payments be made in person, recorded and acknowledged. Derek had brought a cashier's check. He had sold his truck. He had sold the electronics. He had scraped together $5,000. It wasn't the full amount, but it was the start. It was enough to pay Colin Wren his first installment and keep the wolves at bay. "Mr. Parker," Sarah Jenkins said, "you understand the terms? This is a voluntary repayment process to avoid civil litigation." "I understand." Derek said. He looked at the floor. "Please present the payment to the creditor," Sarah said, "and please state for the record what this payment represents." Derek stood up. He walked across the circle. He held the check out to me. I took it. Our fingers brushed. His hand was cold. "State it." "Derek," I said softly. He took a breath. "This is a payment of $5,000, he said. "It is partial restitution for the funds I took from the custodial account of Lillian Parker without authorization." "And the remaining balance?" I asked. $14,600, he said, "to be paid in monthly installments of $1,000, subject to third-party oversight." Sarah Jenkins nodded. The notary stamped the log. It was done. The air in the room seemed to shift. The secret was out. It wasn't just a family dispute anymore. It was a recorded fact, witnessed by strangers. We walked out of the building into the winter afternoon. The sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the parking lot. Derek stopped at his car, a beat-up sedan he had borrowed from a friend since the truck was gone. He leaned against the door. He didn't look angry anymore. He just looked empty. "Lillian," he said. I stopped. "Yeah? Do you remember that Christmas? The one when we were kids. I was 12. You were 7. I nodded. I remembered every Christmas. "Gran gave us those savings bonds," he said, and she looked at me, right in front of everyone, and she said, "Derek, I am putting these in your mother's name because you would just lose them. You will never be the responsible one." I felt a pang in my chest. I remembered that. I remembered the shame flushing his 12-year-old cheeks. I remembered him running to his room. She said it like it was a prophecy. Derek said, like it was written in my DNA. I think I spent my whole life trying to prove her wrong by making big plays, big bets, trying to be the hero who comes home with the fortune. But every time I tried to be the hero, I just dug the hole deeper. He looked at me. His eyes were wet. I just wanted to be the one who fixed things for once. Lil, instead of the one who breaks them. I looked at him. I saw the 12-year-old boy who had been labeled a failure before he even had a chance to start. I felt a wave of empathy so strong it almost knocked the wind out of me. It wasn't his fault that he was broken. Gran had held the hammer. Mom had held the broom. He had just been the debris. But then I felt the weight of the check in my pocket. I thought of the $19,600. I thought of the threat to my job. I thought of Mom's maxed-out credit cards. Understanding him explained the damage. It didn't repair it. "I know, Derek," I said softly. "I know she was hard on you, and I know you wanted to be the hero, but you can't be the hero by making victims out of the people who love you." He looked down at his shoes. "I am sorry. Lillian, for real this time. I believe you." I said, "And that is why I am going to let you pay it back, because that is the only way you are ever going to stop being the one who breaks things." He nodded. He got into the car and drove away. I stood there for a long time. I felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was a true one. We had reached the bottom. We had stripped away the lies. Now, maybe, we could build something real. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a notification from Facebook. A message request from a user I didn't know. I opened it. Sender: Jessica Miller. Message: Hi, I am sorry to bother you. I found your profile because we have a mutual friend in Briar Glen. I saw your last name is Parker. Are you related to Derek Parker, the guy who ran Parker Avenue Resale? I stared at the screen. He owes me $300 for a vacuum he never shipped. I heard he stole money from his family too. Is that true? Because if it is, there is a group of us getting ready to go to the police, and we are looking for other victims. My stomach dropped. I looked at the mediation building behind me. I had just set up a plan to save him. I had just set up a firewall to keep his life from burning down. But firewalls didn't work when the fire was already inside the house. The scandal wasn't contained. It was never contained. Derek had thought he could compartmentalize his life, cheat his customers, cheat his sister, charm his mother, but all the compartments were leaking into each other. I looked at the message again. A group of us. The public repayment I had designed was supposed to be controlled. It was supposed to be my justice. But now, the world was coming for its own pound of flesh. I didn't reply. I turned off my screen. The reckoning had started, and this time, I couldn't stop it. The phone call came at 6 a.m. on a Thursday. It was Derek, and he sounded like a man standing on the edge of a bridge. Lillian, you have to answer. Please. It is Colin. I sat up in bed, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. The winter sun was just starting to bleed through the blinds, casting long gray shadows across my room. What about Colin? I asked. He posted a countdown, Derek said, his voice cracking. On Instagram, on Facebook. He is going live at noon. He is calling it The Truth About Parker Avenue Resale. He sent me a screenshot of his script. He is going to say, I was the mastermind. He is going to say I scammed everyone, and he was just the silent investor who got duped. He is framing you? He is burying me, Derek shouted. He is going to tag Glenmore Logistics. He is going to tag the PTA. He is going to tag the court. If he does this, Lillian, I lose everything. The job is gone. Sarah will file for full custody by dinner time. I won't just be broke. I will be radioactive. I listened to his panic. It was a familiar song, but the pitch was different this time. It wasn't the manipulative whine of a man trying to get a loan. It was the terror of a man watching the sky fall. I cannot stop him. Derek, I said, I do not control Colin Wren. I know. But you have the evidence. You have the emails proving I paid the refunds. You have the timeline showing I was trying to fix it. If you vouch for me. I am not vouching for you. I cut him off. I am not getting into a mud fight on the internet with your ex-partner. Then what do I do? He sobbed. He wins. He gets to tell the story, and I become the villain forever. I got out of bed and walked to the window. I looked out at the frost on the cars below. I thought about the transaction logs. I thought about the lies. I thought about the twice-over clause that was now fully active. There is one way. I said, what? Anything. You have to beat him to the punch. I said, but not on social media. You have to do it in real life. You have to tell the truth before he does. I can't just post a video. He said, no one will believe me. Not a video. I said, the Briar Glen Winter fundraiser is tonight. You are on the committee, aren't you? You are supposed to be volunteering at the auction. Yeah, I am working the check-in desk. So what? So you are going to take the microphone, I said, and you are going to make a donation. A donation? I don't have any money left. I gave you the $5,000. You are going to announce the repayment of the debt to me. I said, you are going to hand over the verified payment schedule for the remaining balance of the double judgment. You are going to frame it as a donation match to the family trust in my name, and then you are going to tell them why. Why? He whispered. Because you took my money. I said, and you are paying it back twice over. Are you insane? He hissed. You want me to stand up in front of the mayor, my boss, and my neighbors, and tell them I am a thief? It is the only way. Derek, if Colin exposes you, you are a scammer who got caught. If you stand up and admit it first, if you say you made a mistake, you harmed your sister, and you are doing everything in your power to make it right. You control the narrative. You become the man who is owning his mess. It might save your job. It might save your custody. But more importantly, it satisfies me. I can't do it. He said, I can't. Then I will file the civil suit tomorrow morning. I said, and I will attach the evidence packet I prepared last night. It includes the bank records, the texts, and the dissolved LC filings. Once that is in the court system, Colin's live stream will just be commentary on a public fact. There was a long silence on the line. I could hear him breathing, ragged and shallow. He was trapped. I had closed every door except the one that led to the stage. I will be there at 7. I said, do not be late. The Briar Glen Community Center was transformed. The sterile meeting rooms were hidden behind gold drapes and twinkling fairy lights. The smell of floor wax was replaced by the scent of pine and expensive catering. This was the biggest night of the year for the town, a fundraiser for the local library and park system. The room was full. I saw the mayor. I saw the principal of the elementary school. I saw Derek's boss from Glenmore Logistics, a tall man with silver hair who was laughing near the bar. I saw our neighbors, people who had known us since we were children. I stood near the back, wearing a black dress, holding a glass of sparkling water. My hand was steady, but my heart was hammering a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. Marianne was there. She was sitting at table 4, looking fragile in a blue velvet dress. She kept checking the door, her eyes darting around the room like a bird trapped in a house. She knew something was happening, but she didn't know what. Derek was at the front. He was wearing his suit, the same one from the mediation, but he had shaved. He looked polished. He looked like the Derek everyone knew, the handsome, helpful guy who organized the softball league. But I saw his hands. They were trembling so hard, he had to grip the podium to stop them from shaking. The auctioneer finished selling a weekend getaway to Lake Erie. The applause died down. Derek stepped up to the microphone. "Excuse me," he said. His voice was too loud, popping on the speakers. He adjusted the mic. "Everyone, if I could have a moment." The room quieted. People smiled. They liked Derek. They expected a joke, or maybe a pitch for the raffle. "I wanted to make a special announcement," he said. He looked out at the crowd. He looked at his boss. He looked at Marianne. Then he found me in the back of the room. We locked eyes. I didn't smile. I didn't nod. I just waited. He looked down at his notes. "We talk a lot about community here," he started, his voice gaining a little strength. "We talk about supporting each other, but sometimes we fail the people closest to us." He paused. The room went very still. This wasn't the usual charity script. "I made a mistake this year," he said. "A big one. I found myself in financial trouble, and instead of asking for help, I took advantage of the person who trusted me the most. My sister, Lillian." A ripple of confusion went through the room. Heads turned. I saw Marianne put her hand over her mouth. I accessed a savings account that my grandmother left for her. Derek continued. "I took $9,800. I told myself it was a loan. I told myself I would put it back. But I lied. I lied to her. I lied to my mother. And I lied to myself." The silence in the room was absolute. It was a heavy, suffocating thing. The clinking of glasses had stopped. The servers froze in the corners. "I am not standing here to ask for forgiveness," Derek said. "I am standing here to make it right. I signed an agreement to repay the debt twice over. $19,600. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. "This contains the certified payment schedule and the initial restitution. Arranged through Briar Glen Restorative Mediation. I am paying it back. Every cent. Not because I got caught, but because—" He faltered. He looked at the script he had written, then crumpled it in his hand. "Because I broke my family," he said, his voice raw and unpolished. "And I don't want to be that guy anymore. I don't want to be the guy who steals from his sister to cover his bets. I want to be the guy who fixes it." He stepped off the podium and walked through the silent crowd. The path opened for him like the Red Sea. No one clapped. No one whispered. They just watched. He walked up to me and handed me the envelope. Here, he said softly. It is done. I took the envelope. It felt heavy. Inside were the bank drafts and the notarized commitment for the wage garnishment we had set up. It was irreversible. Thank you. Derek, I said. For a second, I thought it was over. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Not triumph. Never triumph. But the deep, exhausting relief of knowing that the truth was finally out in the open air where it couldn't be twisted. Then the side door banged open. A man walked in. He was wearing a leather jacket and holding a phone up, the camera light blindingly bright. Colin Wren. He was smirking. He didn't look like a victim. He looked like a predator who had smelled blood. "Aw, isn't that sweet?" Colin shouted, his voice cutting through the stunned room. "A little family reunion." Derek spun around. "Colin, get out of here," he said. Colin laughed. He kept walking, the phone steady, live streaming to whoever was watching. "I am just here to cover the event. Derek, I heard you were making a big speech about honesty. That is rich coming from you. Did you tell them about the customers you ripped off? Did you tell them about the fake tracking numbers? I am paying them back too." "Colin," Derek said, stepping between Colin and the crowd, "I am settling everything." "Settling?" Colin sneered. "You are broke. Derek, you are only paying her because she threatened to sue you. And let's not forget, who helped you get the money in the first place?" He turned the camera toward table 4, toward Marianne. "Hey, everyone," Colin shouted. "Ask his mommy how he got into that account. Ask Marianne Parker how she gave him the password 4 days after the funeral." The room turned toward Marianne. She looked like she had been shot. She gripped the tablecloth, her face draining of all color. She looked like she was going to collapse right there on the carpet. "She didn't know," Derek shouted. "Leave her out of it." "Oh, she knew," Colin yelled back. "I saw the emails. Derek, she set it up. She is just as guilty as you are." The whispers started. I could hear them. "Marianne? No, she's a saint. Is it true?" I looked at my mother. I saw the shame crushing her. She wasn't built for this. She had spent her whole life trying to maintain the image of a perfect family, and now a stranger with a cell phone was tearing it down in seconds. I couldn't let him do it. Not like this. I handed the envelope to a woman standing next to me, Derek's boss's wife, and stepped forward. I walked into the center of the room, into the harsh light of Colin's camera. "Stop," I said. Colin turned the phone on me. "Ah, the sister, the victim. Tell us, Lillian, did Mommy help him steal your money?" I looked at the camera. Then I looked at the crowd. I looked at the neighbors who had judged me for being cold. I looked at the aunts who had told me to let it go. "My mother did not steal the money," I said clearly. My voice rang out in the hall. "But she knew he had access." I continued. "She authorized it because she has spent 30 years being terrified of her son. She has spent 30 years paying his debts, hiding his mistakes, and drowning herself in credit card debt to keep him afloat." I walked over to Marianne's table. I put my hand on her shoulder. She was trembling violently. "She isn't a co-conspirator," I said. "She is a hostage. She has been paying for her silence with fear. And tonight, that ends. Derek is paying the debt. Marianne is finished paying for his sins." I looked at Colin. "And you?" I said. "You were his partner. You took 50% of the profits when things were good. You knew the business model was shaky. You are not a whistleblower. Colin, you are just angry that the gravy train crashed." Colin's smirk faltered. He lowered the phone slightly. I didn't know about the theft." He stammered. "You know now," I said, "and he's paying you. So get out of my fundraiser." Derek took a step toward Colin. His hands were balled into fists. For a second, I thought he was going to hit him. I thought he was going to destroy the fragile dignity he had just reclaimed. "Derek," I said sharply. "Don't." Derek stopped. He looked at Colin. He looked at the phone. He looked at the crowd watching him. "Leave." "Colin," Derek said. His voice was low and steady. "I will send the check on Monday, but we are done here." Colin looked around. He saw the mayor frowning. He saw the security guard moving in from the hallway. He realized he wasn't the hero of this moment. Whatever, he scoffed. I am posting this anyway. He turned and walked out, still recording the floor. The door swung shut behind him. The room was silent again, but the tension had broken. It was replaced by a strange, awkward reality. The play was over. The actors were just people again. Derek walked over to Marianne. He knelt down beside her chair. "Mom," he whispered, "I am sorry." She looked at him. She reached out and touched his face. "I know," she said softly. I picked up the envelope from the woman I had handed it to. "I am going to go," I said to Derek. He stood up and looked at me. He looked exhausted, aged 10 years in 10 minutes. But he looked real. "Thank you." "Lillian," he said, "I didn't say you're welcome. I didn't say I forgive you. Those words were too big for tonight." I just nodded and walked out into the cold night air. I drove home in silence. I felt a strange lightness in my chest. The secret was gone. The money was recovered. The truth was established. I walked into my apartment and threw my keys on the table. I sat down on the sofa and closed my eyes. It was over. Then my phone buzzed. It was an email notification, my work email, which I still had access to on my phone despite the administrative leave. Subject: Case update. Lakebridge Property Group. From David Ross, Director of HR. I sat up. I swiped the screen to open it. "Dear Lillian, I am writing to inform you that the internal audit regarding the Oakwood project has been inconclusive. However, we have received additional information regarding the anonymous complaint. A second source has come forward with digital logs allegedly showing modifications to the vendor files from your terminal. We are reopening the investigation effective immediately to verify the authenticity of these logs. Please remain available for a follow-up interview on Monday." I stared at the screen. A second source. Digital logs from my terminal. Derek was at the fundraiser. Derek had just confessed everything. Derek had just handed me $20,000 of verified funds. He had no reason to keep attacking me. He had surrendered, and he didn't have the technical skills to fake digital logs from my specific work terminal. A cold feeling washed over me, colder than the winter air. If it wasn't Derek. I thought about the office. I thought about who had access to my terminal. I thought about who knew the Oakwood project as well as I did. I thought about the people who had been watching me deal with my brother for months. I realized then that Derek wasn't the only person who resented a woman who kept receipts. He wasn't the only person who felt threatened by someone who refused to look the other way. I put the phone down on the table. The battle with my brother was over. But the war for my reputation? That was just beginning. Thank you so much for listening to My Brother Blew My $9,800 College Savings. I made him repay it. In public. Twice over. I hope you enjoyed this story of justice, accountability, and the complicated dynamics of family loyalty. If you enjoyed the story, please let me know in the comments. I would love to hear where you are listening from and what you thought of Lillian's strategy. Was the twice-over clause too harsh, or was it exactly what Derek needed? Don't forget to subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel for more tales of karma and payback. Until next time, keep your receipts.